Yo, check this out. I designed the ultimate iPhone lock screen.
Instead of the measly 4 widget slots up here that Apple gives you, I've got 8 buttons. But not only that, see the 3 dots under some of these? If I tap just below any of these buttons, it launches menus with even more options.
Let's look at my camera setup for starters. Say something catches your eye and you don't have time to bring up the camera app. You just want to immediately capture it.
Well, if I tap my camera button here, it immediately takes the photo and then opens the Photos app so I can see it. But check out what happens if I tap just below my camera button. It brings up this menu where I can choose if I want to take a selfie, record a video, take a photo with the back camera, or even open the Photos app if I just want to look at my photos instead of shooting a new one. Notice how if I choose take a photo from this menu, it does the usual thing of opening up the camera app with the back camera selected so I can more properly frame my shot. Likewise with these other buttons on the right here, if I tap the Craft button, it will launch the Craft app with wherever I last left off using it. But if I tap just below, it will bring up this menu where I can jump straight to specific documents within Craft. I've even included a direct link to Apple Notes up top here since I'm not yet done migrating all my stuff from Apple Notes over into Craft.
Side note, I've been loving using Craft instead of Apple Notes lately, and I'll be making a video about that soon, so if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, do it now.
All right, rounding out this right side, I've got special buttons for YouTube and Spotify, where if I tap on a button directly, it will launch those apps, but if I tap just below them, it'll bring up menus that link directly to specific playlists.
The YouTube one is especially cool because I've got some extra options in there. From here, I can enter the YouTube studio, or check this out. I can actually jump to my latest video. And not only that, but it copies the video's URL to my clipboard so I can instantly share it wherever.
The rest of these down below are my favorite playlists, but I've also got a direct search option which brings up an overlay where I can immediately search YouTube without even having to open up the YouTube app. Heading back over here to the left side, I've grouped all my AI stuff together. I can launch Discord, or if I tap here, it'll launch Midjourney in Safari. And lastly, if I tap here, it'll launch ChatGPT. But notice that blinking dot just below? Well, this is a special case where if I tap below there, it doesn't launch a menu, but instead it immediately brings up voice mode in ChatGPT so I can start chatting right away.
All right, on to what might be the coolest component of my lock screen, this array of buttons down below, which when combined with what I just showed you up top, I can essentially access everything I want to use on my iPhone directly from my lock screen.
In this first column, I can launch Safari or Feedly, which I mostly use to keep track of my favorite creators on YouTube. Then I've got a dedicated button for Reddit, which in the past I haven't used much, but I've been thinking for a while that I should start using it more, so I brought it front and center here. Below the Reddit button, this @ symbol launches another menu, which basically contains all the social media apps.
By the way, I am @jcaslow on all these platforms, so come follow me on there. I'm always posting interesting stuff, especially on Twitter and my stories on Instagram.
Speaking of Twitter, I've got a dedicated button to launch it, but even more cool is this button below, which can instantly create a new tweet in just one tap. Likewise, I can open the Messages app, or this button down below will instantly jump to my latest texts with my mom.
Hi, Mom.
Then I've got a button for email, and below that I've got a phone-related menu, mostly for speed dials, but I've also got a shortcut which jumps to the setting to silence unknown callers.
Most of the time I leave this feature on, but sometimes I need to uncheck this if I'm expecting a call from somebody who's not in my contacts.
All right, then I've got buttons to launch either of my language apps, Drops and Duolingo. Finally, over here on the right, I've got dedicated buttons for Apple Shortcuts, Widgy, and Apple Settings. And of course, with this ... in the bottom right, as you may have guessed, I've got one more menu. This one's sort of a catch-all containing a lot of extra stuff, mostly settings that I may need to access from time to time.
By the way, see where it says Launcher? This launcher app is actually what I used to build this entire array of buttons that I just walked you through. I'll show you how to configure all this later.
All right, while we're down here, let's talk about these two buttons in the corners. I think they used to be stuck as just camera and flashlight buttons, but luckily with iOS 18, Apple finally let us change these to whatever we want.
Me, I've made them buttons to launch Awesome Habits and Todoist. One recommendation I have for you, please do not waste one of these precious button slots with the camera, because in case you didn't know, we all have immediate access to the camera simply by swiping left from the right edge of your lock screen. All right, now let's talk about my neon green wallpapers, which really set the mood for this whole lock screen. Thing is, when you're first setting up a lock screen, you're immediately prompted with choosing a wallpaper. Apple gives you a few options here, but the one I highly recommend is Photo Shuffle.
Because with this mode, you can choose multiple wallpapers to switch between, and you can even choose how you want these wallpapers to change. For example, on lock, so every time your phone locks, it will randomly display one of your wallpapers. Or you can have it change hourly or daily, but what I prefer is on tap. When you choose on tap, basically you can cycle through your wallpapers at any given moment simply by tapping anywhere on your lock screen. Initially, I set mine to a dedicated album with all my wallpapers in it, but later I realized you're better off choosing the Select Photos Manually option.
This way, you're not stuck with whatever images are located in that album, but you can easily add more wallpapers into your rotation, whether they're in that album or not. By the way, I'll touch on this later, but when I switch to my solo focus mode, it actually swaps in an entirely different set of wallpapers, plus it makes all the buttons and overlays white.
Likewise, at 8 p.m., my phone switches to evening mode, where everything becomes red.
By the way, if you like my imagery, you can download my wallpaper packs at jcaslow.com/shop. In addition to everything I've shown you this far, I've also fully utilized this page of widgets that you can access by swiping right. I'm not sure if there's an official name of this page, but I refer to it as my shelf.
At the very top, I've got a stack of wide widgets. I love this custom widget that I built in Widgy, where it sort of brands my overall iPhone with Caslow in my custom font. Right underneath that, it shows what week of the year we're currently in and a progress bar showing how much time is left in this week. And just below that, it displays my top 2 weekly goals. This is an important visual reminder to me to not only win the day, but also make sure that I accomplish my primary 2 goals before each week runs out. All right, next in the stack, I've got a similarly branded Widgy widget, but this time it gives me shortcut links to open my jcaslow.com website, my shop, Substack, YouTube channel, and my portfolio website at caslow.tv. Next in the stack, I've got the Apple Weather widget, followed by an Apple Calendar widget, and lastly, I display the battery levels of my iPhone and connected devices. Moving down the page, on the left, I've got a small stack, pretty much for calling or FaceTiming my mom.
Yeah, I'ma FaceTime with my mom tonight.
Or reaching out to close friends. To the right, I've got a stack featuring 2 Awesome Habits widgets, the first of which is pretty much my morning routine, and the second of which is a group of habits that I may do multiple times throughout the day, like doing push-ups or planks. At the bottom of that stack is a day stamp widget where I can mark down if I learned some new skills that day, got into a flow state creatively, or if I accomplished some overall system tasks. All right, in the next row, I've placed widgets that have to do with audio capture. What's cool about the Shazam widget on the left is not only does it display the album art and info of my most recent Shazam, but if I tap on the Shazam logo at the top right, it will actually start detecting whatever song is currently playing in the room. Whereas if I tap anywhere else in the widget, it will simply open the Shazam app. On the right side, I've placed a pair of Apple shortcuts, one to instantly record a new voice memo, and the other to open up the Voice Memos app to listen to anything I've recorded.
And lastly, at the very bottom, I've got a widget to add text to my ongoing quick notes in Craft. I love having quick access to this because I don't have to worry about tagging or picking the right document or whatever. It's just a super fast way to immediately jot down whatever thought or idea just came to mind. Super important to be able to do that as fast as possible before your idea is lost forever. And similarly on the right, if I think of something that needs to get done, I tap here to quickly add it to my inbox in Todoist. All right, to wrap up my ultimate lock screen, Let me quickly walk you through how I've set up my control center. So when I swipe down from the top right, this is my default list of controls.
I've got the usual network settings module at the top left, and I've made a big screen recording button to its right. I use this often, so I wanted it super prominent. Below the usual set of items like brightness, volume, and tools like the flashlight and calculator, I've lined up all my timers along the left, and on the right side, I've got an instant translator.
I really wish you could have multiple control buttons where each would translate into a different language, but alas, the Translate app doesn't let you do that. So instead, I created this smaller button underneath that will take me directly to the Translate app, where there I can switch my language from German to Japanese or whatever else. And at the very bottom of this page, I've lined up all my other AI tools like Grok, Claude, Perplexity, and Visual Intelligence. We're going to come back to my page 2 in a second, but let me show you my page 3 first. This page is all about awesome habits. On the left side, I can start a bunch of my timed habits, and on the right side, I've listed habits that I may do multiple times a day. It's handy to have quick access to these because otherwise, once you mark a habit complete within Awesome Habits, it kind of disappears down in your list of completed habits, so it's a pain to have to keep re-accessing those. Having all of these readily available in my control center is super convenient. All right, now back to page 2. This is an important one because here's where I can quickly switch to any of my key focus modes. What's cool here is, this is the generic focus mode switch, but all of these buttons are actually Apple shortcuts, where I've programmed multiple things to happen beyond just switching the focus mode. Like when I tap the solo button, notice how it doesn't just switch my focus mode to solo, but it also tells my launcher buttons down below to switch to all white. Likewise, when I press the evening in button, it tells my launcher buttons to turn red. Notice how if I only use the default focus mode switcher, it fails to update the color of my launcher buttons. Now what I've set up here is obviously a bit advanced, so I'll table a proper explanation of all this for another video. But before we wrap up this walkthrough of my ultimate lock screen, I gotta tell you what I did with the action button. What's super cool here is I've programmed the action button to behave differently depending on my location. If I'm home, regardless of what focus mode I'm currently in, when I press and hold the action button, it brings up a menu for me to adjust all the lighting in my apartment. Whereas if I'm away, when I press and hold the action button, it brings up a completely different menu, only showing me things that are relevant to being out and about, like hailing an Uber or Lyft or accessing maps. Pretty sweet, eh? All right, one last little lock screen enhancement that you probably didn't notice. Apple's default top strip above the clock just displays the current date, and it's not interactive. Whereas mine displays the current date and the current weather conditions, and when I tap on it, it opens up my calendar app. Nothing crazy, but just a really slick use of space to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. I built that top strip, and more importantly, this row of extra buttons below the clock in a super powerful app called Widgy. All right, now that I've showcased all the components of the Ultimate Lock Screen, click here to watch this video next to learn how to customize your own lock screen using Widgy.